Thank you so much for joining me today in my camper van for my podcast, Suicide Sucks. 3 absolutely inspirational gentlemen sat opposite me. Could you just tell us all a little bit about who you are and what brings you to Ledsham today?
Well, I'm Andy and I'm Sophie's dad.
I'm Tim and I'm Emily's dad.
And I'm Mike and I'm Beth's dad. And together we are 3 dads walking.
And yeah, we're on our 3rd walk, aren't we? So
yeah.
We did our first walk between our homes in Cumbria, Manchester and Norfolk in 2021 to show
300 miles.
Yep, to show suicide could happen to anyone across the UK.
Yes.
Yep, and then the second walk was 22 when we walked between the Parliament buildings of the UK to try and rattle some cages, because we realised that with suicide being the biggest killer of young people in this country, that we really need to talk about it. And we're asking the question of government, if this is the biggest risk to our young people, why don't we talk about them in schools?
And that was a mere 500 miles, wasn't it?
600 miles.
Oh yeah, this one's 5 and that was 6. Yeah.
You can tell Mike never navigates, can't you?
No, but it's spending all this time with you two. It's has it adverse effects on me.
So how far through are you now?
So we're about
over halfway.
3/5 of it.
290 miles.
Yeah,
just
so
over.
we're
290.
nearly 3/5. But this walk, so when we did our first walk in 2021, there were 5 offices or hubs that Papyrus had got. With the money that we've raised and other people have donated, they've expanded advanced their expansion plans. So we're now walking down the East Coast between some of the new offices that they have opened or are opening. And by the end of it, they're going to have 18, aren't they, by this year?
Yeah.
We've got 16, I think, already. So we're just coming from Leeds. We're in Leeds. Started at Stirling, through Edinburgh, down to Newcastle, another office, down to Leeds, through Hull, Boston, King's Lynn, and across to Norwich. So where they're going to be opening office this year.
Yeah. So
You've probably, over those 290 miles, experienced quite a lot of ups and downs. But could you just share with us, any particular highlights that there have been during the walk so far?
the people.
Too right.
Always the people.
Yeah.
Always the people. Yeah.
We're trying to pick them out.
The
Really
2 that got to me the other day were Vicky and Steve,
Yeah.
who had lost their son 3 weeks ago and only buried him, or had his funeral last week. Joe, 16, and to see those 2 in absolute raw grief and be able to be there and just listen to them and just,
Yeah.
give them somebody to cry on, someone that's been there.
We
they walked with us for 25 miles, didn't they? Bless them. Just a young, beautiful couple
Yeah.
whose life has just been shattered.
Absolutely.
And we've got other people that are a bit similar.
Yeah.
But those 2 really, just such a lovely couple. Destroyed.
We aren't experts, but obviously we have lived experience. But when we walk and talk, I think it's good for people. And I've said this before, but we aren't a morbid parade. We do laugh, we do joke, and we know how hard it is for these couples. But often we have several, different groups of bereaved parents. We have with us today.
Yeah.
And the wonderful people, but it's trying to get them to be able to carry on, to move forward, and it's so hard. But many of them still have, other kids. They have family, and it's very hard.
Did you talk to was it Catherine that was walking with us this morning? Which lady that talked to me when I was up at the front. She was a suicide survivor.
Yes.
When she was in her 20s.
Yes.
And she's now in her 50s.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful story.
It is.
Somebody
It is.
who had absolutely gone out to take their own life and failed because somebody actually happened to find her in a state of collapse.
Yeah, Mike,
and she's now living a life that's fruitful.
That's hope.
Mike and I sat down, didn't we, the lady in Scotland as we were going into Colchester, that cafe.
Yeah.
And she was in her probably late 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
She was a suicide survivor. She'd been in a really abusive relationship, couldn't see her way out, tried to take her life, failed 30 odd years ago, and now she's remarried, left the partner, remarried, and she's living a beautiful life, and she's so happy now. And she came out to join us just to show us there is hope, beyond that.
Yeah. I'm basically, I've heard a couple of times on this walk in particular where people have turned around and said, but I'm happy now. I'm happy now. And sometimes people can see through that despair, and especially when you're young, I think, you know, things affect you more. You can just see a screen of nothing in front of you, no hope. But the truth is, if you manage to get through it, you know, life changes.
Yeah.
You mentioned about, you know, not wanting it to be sombre, you know, things like that. How on earth do you keep your spirits up day in, day out?
It's actually good fun.
Yeah.
You know, going for a walk of this length
Yeah.
and across the British countryside is actually a really nice thing to do in its own right. So that's good. But the fact that we get so much feedback, so much positive feedback to say that what we're doing and what we're talking about is giving other people hope and giving them some ideas about what they can do to help either their children or themselves. And the responses we get and the feedback we get, it's so directly aimed at us to say you're doing a good thing.
Yeah.
It's dead easy to keep going.
Yeah,
you
it
don't need
is.
to be inspired by it.
It
Just
is.
do it.
Yeah.
Do it 'cause it-
But it's a journey every day, isn't it? If you like, it's what, you know. We have a start and a finish point every day. We have the start and finish point of the whole walk as well. Every day is different. The people, the landscapes, the accent, the weather. You know, everything is different. And they're very powerful trips, aren't they, in many ways?
You know, one of the things that I really like, and it's kind of getting my head around it on this one, is the fact that we plan it. We've all got all this planning done, and we know where we're going, we know the logistics of getting everything down, and we know we've got to walk. But then we actually turn up to set off. You've got no idea what's going to happen between when you know what you're going to do in terms of distance and the route, but the people you're going to meet along the way, once you set off, you've got no idea and no control. And so it's like, oh, there's a surprise. Like, waiting to go and do that bit of Methodist
Church, bless them. And that's the bit that really kind of keeps us going big time, is the kind of human kindness that is out there.
Absolutely.
And we said that when we did it, when we started our first walk, we just lost our girls, and you felt like you'd lost faith in humanity. You totally lost faith in humanity. And when you realise that people were coming out to feed you, because that's how they love you, they just want to keep feeding you and feed you, incessantly feeding you.
Food's a theme, isn't it?
Theme.
Yes.
But strangers putting this up in their house. We'd never met these people. And then the other day, Tina and Malcolm came out. And these are a couple, we put a plea out for an area on our first walk.
Yeah.
They opened up their Airbnb to us. They were just lovely. We sat in the kitchen eating with them, didn't they?
Yeah.
They turned up the other day to say hello.
Yeah,
Didn't
it was
they?
lovely.
So these are people who
walked with us till we got into that big puddle.
Then they went home.
Yeah.
So it's the kindness of people as well.
It is. I mean, who'd want to put up three smelly old blokes, you know, walking across? Because you know,
I'll turn you around.
I wouldn't let mine.
Yeah. But people are absolutely so kind, and we've got to thank them as well.
Yeah.
We couldn't do this if it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
So you're parents, I'm a parent. You know, is this something that we should be really worried about?
I would say it's the most important thing for parents to worry about, if it's the biggest killer of our young people. And it's suicide. Andy always says suicide has always been there, but it's been hidden under the radar. A bit like cancer was in the 1950s. People just went away to die, and they got the big C. But now, we, all three of us are just absolutely determined to call it out. It's the biggest killer of under 35s in the UK. 6,000 people a year, and those are only the ones that the coroner says are suicide. 200 teenagers, again, only the ones that the coroners say. Well, this last week we met just in one area, loads of parents of teenagers. It's way more than 200 a year that have died. All the parents of 11, 12, 13 and 14-year-olds that we've met who've taken their own lives, not one of them I can think the coroners put down as suicide. They were all death by misadventure. So that figure of 200 is way more than that. So why, parents, trust me, you don't need to worry about algebra, you need to worry about suicide. It's looking after your kids, and we need to have those open conversations with our kids. They can do it from a really young age. You can do it without mentioning the S word. You can do it about help-seeking behaviour.
But I think it's one of those things as well that certainly my family and myself, I lived in blissful ignorance. It was like that I would never have to talk about suicide to Beth at all, because I was one of those families, it would never touch my family. How wrong was I? And if we had been more aware, if Beth had been more aware and I had been more aware, there's a chance she'd still be here now.
So on a daily basis, advice to any parents, what would you say?
Make yourself aware.
Yep.
Yes, educate yourself, even if it's an online course around suicide prevention or suicide awareness, and try and keep the conversation going with your young ones. Not always easy with teenagers, I know, but don't be afraid to ask those questions as well. You know, are you thinking of suicide? Are you thinking of taking your own life?
Ask twice.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
accept the first answer they say.
Yeah.
So you've got a fair way left to go. Where do you end up eventually, you know, if people wanted to come out and support you on that very final day?
Well, we've got a few days of it left, so it's May the 11th we finish off. And it's April or something today, isn't it?
30th, isn't it?
Still in April.
Is it? So
Yeah.
we've got another 11 days.
Yeah.
of
Yes,
walking.
yes,
But
yeah.
the thing to do is look on our website, 3dadswalking.uk.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's the page on this Walk of Hope 2024. There's all our schedules, so the itinerary, starting place, finishing place, and date, obviously. And if you press the tracker button, there's a line on the map which shows our route. And when we're actually walking, the tracker is live, and so you can follow us.
And we start walking most days at 7:30. That's the plan, 7:30. And we generally finish 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, sometimes a bit
Depending
later
on,
than that.
depending on how many times we have to stop
And do podcasts.
and how long
Do
for.
podcasts.
How can people donate?
Big donate button on the website.
Yes,
And
yeah.
it all goes straight to Papyrus.
And we do all,
Prevention of endless
we read all the messages on there, so if people donate, you know, we do read the messages, you know, and Papyrus couldn't exist if it wasn't for the goodwill of, you know, people, but you never know when you may need Hopeline 247.
Yeah, so Papyrus Prevention of Endless Suicide run this emergency line, which is now 24/7, called Hopeline 247, as Mike says, that either if you're having suicidal thoughts, you can phone, or if you're a concerned other, like a parent, and you don't know you're concerned about your young person, or brother or sister, you can phone that line and speak to the suicide prevention professionals. So they're paid to do that job 24/7 to try and put a suicide safety plan in place around that young person.
Yeah.
So what's the next big challenge then, or, you know, have you got anything in mind?
I've recently sort of moved from Manchester to Anglesey. I do go between the two, but the point is I'd like to get these boys to walk around Anglesey, smaller walk, but to highlight the issues within rural communities and small towns on there. So, you know, I just put it out there.
Thank you so much for joining me, taking time out of your, you know, busy schedule. I know that you've got loads of people to fit in along the way, so thank you very much. Any last thoughts that, you know, you just want to leave us with?
The main thing is, isn't it, that most powerful stories we hear, and we've said this already just about, are from those who've been in crisis, many times tried to take their own lives, but are now living that life they want to, you know, and in many cases they say they're happy.